Welcome to Oregon Voters Digest, the program that brings forward the social and political issues that are important to people living here in the Pacific Northwest. And now, your host, Bruce Broussard.
Welcome again to this segment of the Oregon Voters Digest. I'm Bruce Broussard, your host, and by George, we're going to have quite a series here. As you know, we've got a number of issues here within our state, here in the state of Oregon, but within this country, for that matter. And one of the major issues, as far as I'm concerned, that one should understand and know and have knowledge of is the Constitution of the United States, the rules of the game, the definition of what this country is, what we live by, for that matter. So I thought we'd have a good discussion on defining what is the Constitution. When did it start? Why did it start? And what are we doing with it today? This is not a personality game that we're in at this point in time. You know, these are some serious moments. And it's important to talk to the definition of the Constitution. Then we'll have a better understanding of how we resolve the issues that we're faced with today. Not only in these United States, but here in the state of Oregon and here in Portland, Oregon. Okay? Mm-hmm. And joining me today to do this, a gentleman I've known for a number of years, who you've seen before, even on the Oregon Voters Digest. His name is Derry Jackson. He's a community activist, but trust me, he's got a slate of areas that he identifies with. He's been very much involved in the community. He's an educated in many ways, in all due respect, and a darn good friend. A person he's run for office before, and so hopefully I can get him motivated again to run again, because it's important that we are in need of leadership today. This is not about just basically getting the monies and just buying your way in. Mm-hmm. This is about seriousness. We got to get folks that are not interested in the personality piece, playing the game. And i.e., you know what the personality is right about Trump. Once you say Trump, you can't talk about anything. You can't even talk about solutions. Okay? Mm-hmm. So the bottom line, I brought him in here today, and so guess what he's doing? He's going to spend some time educating us and informing us about the definition of the Constitution and how it's implemented within our system. It is the greatest country in the world. Okay, so with that, Derry, how you doing?
I'm blessed, Bruce. I can't be better. I can't be better.
Well, you look good, and I looked at the cover you got on. I love that cover, and a lot of the action is Texas.
That's right.
And I'm glad you wore that one. Texas, the largest state in the union, right?
Well, it certainly is in terms of
land-wide, right?
Well, Alaska is actually bigger than her, but
you see what I'm saying?
She's economically she's big. She runs a lot of things that runs this country. Take education, for example. Yes. Every textbook you see started in Texas.
That's right. A lot of folks don't understand that. No. Tell them that again.
It is every textbook. Texas have an exorbitant amount of pressure on this country, and no more would you see that impact than in education.
Yeah, that's right.
All of our textbook adoption. You remember I used to be a school board member.
Yes.
One of the biggest,
most important. School, by the way, he was a member.
One of the most important things in your school is the textbook.
Right.
And adoptions are not only pretty expensive, but they're pretty important because they determine what your students get into their minds. Texas runs the country in terms of textbook adoptions, and frankly, the degradation of our country is through education.
Yes.
And I have sometimes can't help but wonder if I'm a skeptic by nature. if not, education was the vehicle that was used to get us to the point that we are right now.
Wow, isn't that something? And we can talk about that too, right?
Absolutely.
When you start talking about African Americans, those individuals who built this country in many ways.
Well, that's another show in itself, because I tell you that
that's a whole different ballgame. Yeah. But anyway, let's get right down to the point. Because we're going to spend some hours, and what we're going to do, we're going to spend the first part of the show with the whole issue of defining what is the Constitution. Mm-hmm. Okay, and then we're going to bring it up into today's issues. And how it relates, if you will, to all the activities that are happening with us at this point in time. So welcome aboard.
Thank you. Okay, pleasure to be here.
So, hey, start where you want to.
Well, listen, I think, the U.S. Constitution was informed by a number of things. The concept of the Constitution actually came out from the Native Americans. Our founding fathers were impressed with how they were able to organize themselves, and pulled a lot of their structure from the Native Americans. But for example, the Bill of Rights, you can trace that back to the Magna Carta, where in effect the barons forced the king to sign on the line that says you cannot, one, deny a person of their freedoms without having a public hearing and being judged by their peers. Mm-hmm. That was a huge part that came out of the Magna Carta that we still see in our Bill of Rights. Mm-hmm. And also the concept of punitive fines mm-hmm. and excessive punishment. Those were also things that came straight out of the Magna Carta. The Bill of Rights in itself was an amendment. The Constitution went through bloody battles to get here, and it was not easy. When you look at a lot of the votes, they were super close. New York, I think the spread in New York, the delegates that approved New York coming on board with the Constitution was like 3 votes. Virginia, I think it was a 10-vote spread. But we got to go back though and think of it like this. First of all, the Constitution is a document that allows us to have a government of the people, by the people. That's a very important.
And for the people.
Yes, and for the people.
Right.
The Founding Fathers were very much afraid of government. And certainly the states were very much afraid of federal government. They were coming off of a king, King James,
yeah, right.
and were very concerned about the things that a king can do. We should back up though. Our laws are driven primarily by commerce. I'll preface it to say this. You remember the Boston Tea Party?
Yes,
those
Boston
kinds
Tea
of
Party.
things. The Americans were very much angry that they were going to be taxed without representation. Twice England passed taxes, and twice they had to repeal them because the Americans wasn't having that. They did not have representation in the parliament. But backing up though, we got to recognize that after the war, after we had the revolution, mm-hmm. and we deposed the English, what the English did, we had basically 13 nations. Actually, yeah, I think it was about 13 nations there. Colonies. What the English did was they started dumping goods and commodities into the New World. They had lost control of the colonies.
Right.
So what they did is they started importing goods and services, well, goods primarily,
right.
and in effect dumping them into the new country.
Yeah, their country.
It used to be theirs. Now it's these 13 hillbillies they would call them back then.
Right.
And we started to realize that we had a problem it wasn't a nation at that time. It was 13 individual countries. They realized they had a problem because while they were taxing each other on goods and services coming in, they couldn't tax the British with their stuff coming in. So what was happening, imagine you can buy, let's say a hat. You can get a hat out of Kentucky, or you can get a hat coming out of England.
Right.
Well, the hat out of Kentucky, and let's say you're in New York, the hat out of Kentucky had a tax, and that tax created a higher price. This is the tariff.
Right. The tariff.
It created a higher price for that tax out of a hat out of Kentucky. Mm-hmm. But here's this English product that came in from England that, let's say, it was half the price. Which one would you buy? So the colonies realized they had a problem. So they started to think about ways they can actually counter that. And one of the ways they did that is they had to realize they had to organize themselves as a national, common body. Mm-hmm. And that led to the Articles of Confederation. And then that in itself was weak. We had Shays' Rebellion, where the farmers in the West in Massachusetts stopped paying, they couldn't pay their bills, and we were literally the rich bankers in the East, in Boston, was jailing the farmers. We used to have debtor prisons. So Shea almost overtook Massachusetts, requested help from Washington, but what we didn't, the way they put the government together then, it was weak. We didn't have a national military. So they almost lost the whole thing by a civil war inside of our country, and that keyed them on to the need to have a common defense. If you look at our Constitution, it calls for a common defense. Okay, that's the first thing it calls for. The second thing it calls for is for the welfare of the commons. Those are really the only two things the Constitution brought into bear. The need for us to have a common way to protect ourselves and a way for us to help each other. Those are the two. They're right there in the very beginning of the Constitution. But in bringing this together, there were a lot of things that the founders knew they needed to include. The Bill of Rights was not one of them that they knew they could pass. The thing barely passed. The Constitution was passed in a series of waves. The main 7 articles were what we consider the Constitution. That was passed in the first round and eventually ratified. Some in 1791, I think, was when it was all put together, when the last one came on board. But if you notice, none of the individual rights were in or are in the articles. Article 1 basically organized, and by the way, this is important to keep in mind. The power structure is integral to the Constitution. The Article 1 formed the Congress. Article 2 authorized the executive branch. So just in that relationship, you can see the import. The most important part of the government was the Congress, because it's a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And then the executive was brought on. I brought some notes to go over. The executive was brought on to expedite things. Congress is made up right now of 535 souls, 435 in the House, another 100 in the Senate. And that's a lot of people to get on one accord to sign. Imagine signing contracts and stuff like that. So they needed to have an expeditious way of getting the work done. But going back to the point, Congress has the first authority. It's the most important branch. The executive branch came in as the second, and then the third branch, Article 3, basically articulate the federal court system. But if you look at the Article 3, one of the things it says straight off is that the dictate of the courts are driven by the laws written by the Congress. Okay? So again, you can see that the most power, the highest power, is set in the Congress. Those 3 branches were set up as checks and balances in and of itself. All right. I should mention the biggest, Virginia then was the biggest state, and they had the most amount of delegates to the convention in Philadelphia. But the smaller states were super worried. The fact that we have a Senate is one of the compromise that they made. The smaller states were able to get that as a compromise to check the bigger states. That compromise is still here today. If you look at a state like Wyoming, Wyoming has had less people in it than Washington, D.C. Places like Puerto Rico. But Wyoming has 2 senators. Okay? The Dakotas used to be 1. Okay? They split that into 2. North and South, and got 4 senators out of the deal. And again, those are 2 states that actually are less populous than a lot of other places like Puerto Rico. Just out of the mere fact that where they are, a lot of people are not going to live there. But it was a way how the smaller states was able to check the bigger states. But we should talk about the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights came in once they got the Articles of Confederation set up the federal government, the ability for us to tax and raise an army and maintain an army. And the founders knew that to put the Bill of Rights in, they would never get it passed. So they had to do it in phases. Almost right after they got the articles ratified, then came the first 10 bills. And it's very important even there to notice the order. The first amendment was the freedom, the freedom of education, of religious freedom. It kept the government from putting their foot on us based on our religious practices. That's a very important point, because if you look at the colonies and how the colonies came to be, they were themselves very religious intolerant. The Puritans were the ones coming off the Mayflower. A lot of people say, the history would have us believe that the Puritans came here looking for religious freedom. That is very incorrect. The Puritans came to protect their religious concepts. That's why they're called the Puritans. They were migrating here to create a space where their version of religion can be adhered to. And in those earlier days, places like Rhode Island and New Hampshire, they were formed by people who moved here, lived in Massachusetts, but got kicked out because of how they choose to practice their religion. In fact, every one of those 13 colonies were formed on a basis of religious intolerance of each other. We were banishing people left and right, hanging people in some cases for their religious practices. The state of Maryland was a unique charter. The state of Maryland was specially put in place to allow Catholics a safe place to be in the New World. Then England, they went through various periods of Catholicism. Bloody Mary, for example, was a staunch Catholic, and her concept of Bloody Mary came because she was killing anybody that did not convert back to Catholicism. The day of Bartholomew, one day, they slaughtered 3,000 Protestants. 3,000 Protestants were slaughtered in one day, the day of Bartholomew. This is how intolerant they were. Come over here in the colonies, same thing was happening. Almost every one of those colonies were formed because we banished somebody from another colony. One of the most religious tolerant colonies was Pennsylvania. That is why, in fact, Philadelphia was the place for the convention. William Penn was, when he came over here, one of the things he noticed is how mean we were to each other just for our religious or non-religious practices. The state of Pennsylvania was established as a safe harbor for everybody and anyone. And it quickly became even bigger than Virginia in terms of population. So the founding fathers realized that we needed a federal government, if for one thing, to be able to check the product dumping that England was doing. She was actually doing a backdoor way to defuse and neuter the new country. And they fixed that by creating a federal government now, which had the ability to create treaties and charge tariffs and various things of that nature. These are, by the way, responsibilities of the Congress, not of the executive branch. Nowhere in the Constitution does it give the president the ability to get involved in trade on a financial basis. All those are rights and responsibilities of the Congress. But in short, the founding fathers realized we needed government, but at the same time, they realized that government, the biggest threat to freedom was government, recognizing what a king and those things did. So the Bill of Rights were passed, and in there it specified the way now governments have to conduct their business affairs with us as individuals. The Magna Carta, for example, one of the biggest tenets of the Magna Carta was the ability for us to move, to travel freely. But if you look at their language, we were allowed to travel freely for trade. It's right there in their language. Yeah, it's all about trade, all about money. Okay, but here comes the Bill of Rights, and it did establish a way for us to basically petition our government for help if indeed we are being abused. The Bill of Rights is the key. Now, there's a couple things I want to mention about that. One is the fact that the checks and balances of the Constitution are now in jeopardy. And that came as a result of the party system. A lot of our founding fathers, James Madison, did not want parties. They did not believe in parties. Jefferson was one of the ones who pushed parties. But the reason why they didn't want parties is for exactly what we see today. Although we have three branches, and they're supposed to have checks and balances on each other.
And three branches are?
The Congress, the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judicial branch. The legislative branch, anytime you hear legislature, it's those who creates the laws. The executive branch are really the person in charge of executing the laws. They have that's why the FBI and the military is under the executive branch. But only Congress could declare war against foreign nations. The judicial branch was put in place to help us as individuals and companies argue for our protections. So those three branches were put in place to check each other. But in come now the party system, and up until recently it worked. But with the onset of this new era, and what has been going on since, you could almost take it back to, there's two phases. You could take it back to Reagan, but I could actually go back to Nixon. The Republican Party have in effect created such a powerhouse. There's some states that they run everything. Tennessee, supermajority in all branches, supermajority. Texas is trying to get there. It has gotten to the place where party is first. And as long as party is first, this is one of the reasons why our Congress cannot and will not check the executive branch, because party first. And in effect, the same is going on with the judicial branch, especially the Supreme Court. It's party first. And what that set up is a scenario where we have today, where we have, for example, an executive that is taxing goods and services coming into this country, and that is expressly a right of the Congress, but they're not asserting that. We've had, for a number of years, it didn't start with this administration, but for a number of years, we have been declaring war without declaring war. And again, one of the reasons is because declaring war is a function of the Congress. Why that's important is because it gets back to the money. These things cost a lot of money, and that money is provided by the people. And the founding fathers realized that at some point, the people would have suffered enough, and they could upset everything to upturn the apple cart. So it is very important that we as a country get back to that concept. This is why the Constitution is very important. Now, let me mention this. If your rights are violated, one of the things we don't teach ourselves is, one of the first things you should do is write your congressman or your senator, or both. Okay? Before you go to court even, if your rights and privileges according to the Bill of Rights have been violated, the first people you should let know, you need to contact your representatives in the Congress. The other thing you should be simultaneously doing is writing to the local newspapers. those things were expressly described in the Federalist Papers, where they talked about how we exercise and get our rights ascertained or asserted. We are to contact our representatives and let them know what's going on. We are to contact our local media and let them know what's going on. The local media, I presumably, should make it be aware that, you know, Bruce has had his possessions taken without due process, and all of us as a society, our heckles should go up, because if it happens to one of us, it could happen to any one of us. And then you go to court, and the courts, using the law, supposed to rule based on the facts of the case. Our freedoms, whenever our freedoms are in jeopardy, you are entitled to a jury of your peer. That came right out of the Magna Carta. And I should also mention that even before we passed our Bill of Rights, and in between the Magna Carta, the same thing happened in England. When England, they had a king named James II, who was ruthless. He was deposed by the people. The English kicked him out of office, or deposed him as a prince, as a king. Brought in Mary, and I forgot who Mary and James, I think. No, Mary. I forgot who the other person was. But one of the things they forced Mary into doing was sign the Bill of Rights. This isn't Bloody Mary, by the way. Sign the Bill of Rights that the English had. They actually had a Bill of Rights before us. And a lot of the language that we use came right out of their Bill of Rights. And again, they all came from the Magna Carta, and they're all designed to force government to protect us as individuals, as citizens, and to assure our freedoms, particularly the ability to move and trade.
A government of the people, by the people, and for the people.
Yes.
I think that's how that came about.
E pluribus
Un. Yes.
Out of many comes one.
Yes.
That actually used to be our national motto until, I want to say, in 1957, it was changed. It was changed to under God, in God we trust.
Yes, right.
It used to be E pluribus unum.
Right,
out of many comes one.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Well, and so today what we got to realize is we are not at a loss. We may have electors that do not understand their responsibility, but it's incumbent on us as a people to make sure they are aware. And here's why this is important. 50 some odd years ago, China was one of the poorest countries on earth. In fact, it was occupied by the Japanese. An island occupied this massive country of then 600-700 million people. Today, they are number 2 in economies. Their GDP is about 2 or 3 times ours, but 15 years ago, it was more like 8 or 10 times. Our economy was 8 or 10 times bigger than theirs. This is less than 20 years ago. Today, it's 2 or 3 times big. Actually, it's less than that now. It's actually less than that in terms of GDP. I think our GDP was around 24 trillion. Theirs is around 18 trillion dollars. But the trend does not bode well for us. China has closed up on us in record time, and I used to say, in my time, I will see China surpass us in GDP. But it seemed, I've been looking at the numbers, it almost seemed like within the next 4 years, China will surpass us in GDP. Now, here's why that's important. Back in 1948, after the war, the world came together and agreed that the United States will be, the currency of the United States will be what's called the world reserve currency. Being the world reserve currency gave us a lot of perks. One of the perks we have is we could print money. Everybody else have to have their money backed by dollars that they have to keep in their central bank as reserves. That's how they prop up their value. They have to prop it up based on the U.S. dollar. Well, and the other thing we should mention is that fuel since 48 has been priced in dollars. You cannot buy fuel unless you buy it in dollars. So anyone around the world had to go get US dollars in order to buy petrol or oil for their country. Saddam Hussein was one of the first ones to try selling fuel outside of the US dollar. He being angry with us. At the time we had a no-fly zone on him, and his in retaliation, he refused to sell his oil. He demanded the oil be bought in euros. You see what happened to Saddam Hussein. That was one of the reasons we went in there and deposed him. Just this week or maybe last week, the second country to ever have done that did that, Nigeria. Nigeria just laid the law down. If you're going to buy their fuel, they're not taking the US dollar anymore. They're not taking the US dollar. And I think the house of cards is about ready to fall. And the problem with that is, for us, is I remember traveling to Europe in 2001 and looking at the fuel pump. The company, I worked for Mercedes-Benz or Daimler-Benz, and I had a company car, and I had to buy fuel every now and then while I was there, and I noticed the prices. At that time, I don't know, it was $1 something a gallon. At the pump, it was $5-6 a liter. Now, that's, to get a gallon, that's almost, you need two and plus liters to get $1. That told me that our fuel would have been around, if we were buying it at that price, our fuel would have been close to $18 a gallon. $18 a gallon. Could you imagine this economy if we were paying $18 a gallon for fuel? The reason why our fuel have been so cheap is because the fact that our fuel is sold enumerated in dollars. So we, in effect, have been subsidized all up until now. We got to be careful, because what just recently happened again is another reason that makes us a superpower and make our dollar so strong is, until now, U.S. securities, our bonds and bills, U.S. treasuries, we sell them from Tuesday to Thursday, different types. Those things are one of the most sought after investments on earth. Every morning, every Tuesday morning to Thursday morning, the rich and the wealthy, they wake up, and that's what they do. They go and they park. They have a lot of money. They park their money in these bonds and bills because it's a solid investment. Well, China has been slowly inching up on that calculus. They've been slowly inching up on us, and just in the last couple of months, they have been, their bills, their bonds are actually in higher demand than ours. What that portends for me is, one of these days, if we don't get our act together, one of these days we're going to wake up and realize that the wealthy, the world, is not investing in the United States anymore. By the way, the reason we need those bonds and bills is because we run a deficit every year. That money is what we use to continue to pay the federal bills. Make sure those warships have fuel, our soldiers are paid and fed, and government has their lights on. It is that money that people are pouring in every week to make up that deficit. And today, we with a national debt at over 38 trillion, and what seemed to be an indisciplined monetary policy, meaning we don't even pass budgets anymore. Everything is a continuing resolution. I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but there's a process where a budget is adopted, but there have been so much shenanigans. All we've been doing is rolling over previous budgets. That's all we've been doing. And as a result, we have a runaway fiscal policy situation. We're running deficits. The reason by having a budget, releasing a budget, is that's when you have the ability now to balance your expenditures to your tax revenues. Continuous resolutions don't do that. All it's simply doing is we're just going to roll over and roll over and roll over.
On that particular point, that was made just recently. As you
Yeah,
know.
and in fact, it's coming up again.
Yes, and so the whole idea is that let's get this thing passed. We're sitting in the wake-up zone now.
We had better.
And I'm going to throw this out to you, and then that's why I've always maintained that we're kind of like as you say, rather than recognizing the things that you shared, because it all started here. It would not have, we wouldn't be sitting here had it not been. We started here with about 300 million people as opposed to 3 billion, 3 billion, right? And so the name of the game is that this wake-up call. We had the businesses, businesses went over there. I mean, my point is, all of a sudden now is, rather than us dealing with the issues that you talked to, which was created here, we're dealing in personality.
Yes.
It's just Trump. Wait a minute. No, it's not. He's sitting in that seat.
He happens to be the president.
He's the president of the United States of America, okay? It's not that Trump. No, he's the president of the United States of America. So the key is that the things that you were mentioning in the revolution, the evolution of all the things that you're saying aspect of it, if we don't focus on that, as opposed to personality, it's going to go.
The process, absolutely. So it comes right back to the Constitution. It comes right back to the Constitution. Right. The Constitution, going back to the Magna Carta, one of the things it insisted on is that we are a people of the law of order. They use the words the law of the land.
Yes.
It has since been changed to the rule of law.
Yes.
It means the same.
Yes.
That is to say that collectively we agree that we will conduct ourselves in this way.
Right.
And it gives us the confidence to sign contracts and have expectations of each other.
Yes.
And it's not willy-nilly
Right.
and wishy-washy. Well, we've got to focus our opportunities. Let's use that word. Our opportunities is to go back and focus our energies on the process. Okay? And it starts literally with each and every one of us as Americans, some 350 odd million people. And we better get our act together because, China has 1.2 billion. India has surpassed it. China is not the largest population anymore. It's India. She has 2.2 something more than China, just a little bit more than China.
And they're in numbers, they've got that piece.
They have the numbers. And the thing about the numbers is this. If you think of, let's say you have a town with 100 people and a town with 100,000 people. You likely will find a higher degree of poverty in the town with 100 people than the town with 100,000 people. And the reason is simple. Our ability to create an income for ourselves hangs on trade. Okay, remember, going back to what the country started on was trade, and the fact that the British was dumped. It's all about trade. The lights have to be paid. Food have to be brought into the house. Rent and mortgages have to be paid. Well, that's income from where? That's income from work. Well, work is part of the trade. Okay, and we have to protect that. And the thing we got to keep in mind is China have 1.2 billion people working for Freightliner back in the day. I remember in the 90s, we were trying to build a truck manufacturing plant over there. And
it's the Freightliner.
Freightliner, yeah. It's headquarters right in Portland. I left them in the mid-2000, early 2000. But just before I left them, our president called a big meeting and he announced that they have abandoned the plan to put the plant over there. What we were run into was literally every time we think we have a deal on land, we discover that we paid the wrong person. It's somebody else that owns the thing. So I remember him saying, we've spent millions of dollars and we have not laid a single brick down yet. So he just scrapped the whole thing. The reason I brought that up is people who who believe in trade realize that China is the number one place to go. Why? Again, it's because it has so many people over there.
Products too.
They're the production engine of the world. But again, if you're selling things, you want to go to that market. The market with 100 people is going to give you 100 sales, perhaps. Mm-hmm. This market with 100,000 people is 100,000 possibility for 100,000 sales. So when you're thinking about trade, you're attracted to the numbers. So that's why the world is attracted to China, and everybody seems to be wanting to go there. The reason that we have been the number one heretofore is the fact that we are the richest country, whereas what China had all that number, but half of them were peasants and workers, people that owned farms and didn't and was illiterate for that matter. In fact, talking about literacy, I looked up the numbers recently. About 50 years ago, China's literacy rate was around 50%. Today, China's literacy rate as a country is 97%. 97% of the Chinese people are literate. Unfortunately, we have been sliding. In America, it's 79% of Americans are literate. Mm-hmm. Now, what does that mean? So what does that portend? Well, the thing about literacy is the more literate a person is likely the more affluent they are. The more they're in a position to be able to trade with you. They have the means to trade with you. So I'm saying this to say is imagine if we slide backwards and we have less and less people literate, that's less and less people that are able to trade. And incidentally, as you have a larger degree of illiteracy, you're going to have a larger degree of people with need. Housing, food. These are things, as a human being, you're going to need a place to live, else you're going to find a place, even if it's on the street. You're going to need food. And if you don't find it, you're going to go into the nearest store and steal from them. These are things that we don't want to have around us. It is not safe for us. All this to say is we as a country need to wake up and realize that the answer is in looking at the laws. That's the process. And it starts with educating ourselves on the process.
That's where Texas come in.
Well, that's with the curriculum, yes. What you can do today, though, and this is for you as a constituent, you can call your representative today and request a pocket-sized constitution.
Yep.
They'll send it out to you just for the asking.
Yep.
Okay.
I used to carry one.
And I used to as well. I couldn't find mine. I was trying to find it for the show. I think I gave it away. Is what it is. But the thing about the Constitution is, if you are accosted by a police officer or an ICE agent, this is your ticket to remind them of your rights as a U.S. citizen. And those rights, frankly, are under attack, but they're still in place today. And what little energy and what little we still have on the table, we need to get comfortable with using it and exercising it.
On that particular point, and even going back from when you first started this issue, is that in layman's terms, I would say we were the one that developed the patents. We developed all of the pieces.
Yes.
And we had the patents.
Yes.
Okay.
I think we're still the leading country in patents issued. I don't know if you know. I have a patent myself.
Yes. But see that in layman's terms, okay, it's generated here because we had to survive because England had it all initially, and they sent all of these folks here, blah blah blah, routine and whatever in this country. But there were some of the folks that were here were part of that aristocracy. And because of all that water, say, well, look at, wait a minute here. I think we can do our own thing because we got that ocean here. They got to bring all those troops over that water.
That's right.
And that's basically what that was all about.
It was a buffer. It protected
and they took
us.
that whole system and basically took it in this particular form and took their economics and developed the peace and developed the patents.
Absolutely.
And now the patents are at threat, and that's why I'm making the point where we're sitting today. Let's not confuse ourselves. It's a wake-up call.
Yeah.
No, there is a presidential seat there. And we do have a voting system that, if the score is 1-0, you won the game.
Yeah.
But you're sitting there. And the process goes after a certain period of time. If you are in dispute with that, then you can run too.
Absolutely. That's the beauty about the system.
Right. But don't play the game of saying, let's continue with the personality deal. Because in all due respect, and I'm just being straight up, you're not going to beat the personality with Donald Trump.
Well, no.
I'm just saying,
not
personality right.
Not with him, because one of the things that make Donald Trump effective is he does not have any guardrails.
Yeah, but he has the wake-up call. But he's right in the midst of the wake-up call.
In fact, we needed him. It's causing us to wake up.
It's causing us to wake up. Aspect.
You know what Donald Trump reminded me of? And again, I don't want to get caught up in personalities.
No.
There's a saying, and some of us might be familiar, the traffic light. Traffic lights don't go up magically.
That's right.
Usually people fight against them. What causes a traffic light to go up is when enough people are injured. When there's enough death and mayhem, that's when we better put up that traffic light.
That's right.
There's one. My kids went to Jesuit, and they have a traffic light that wasn't there. And I remember, because my kid used to have to cross that street, worrying about my kid and all the kids that got to cross that street to go to class. And a lot of times we were running really tight.
Yeah.
We were coming from the North Portland, running all the way over there, and that bell ring. When that bell ring, you better be in your seat.
That's right.
So, and I think it was a child getting injured. I'm not sure if she got killed, but traffic lights are a thing that we only see the need only after and when we see the accidents are happening. And I think that's where we are with Trump. But keep this in mind, though. We do get to change presidents every 4 years. Patrick Henry was one of in fact, he's considered the United States best orator. He is known for give me liberty or give me death. He was he was staunchly against the Constitution. He thought that the document was worse than the king himself. And he would rather have a king and that kind of stuff. But where was I going with this? The thing he was worried about was the fact that when we passed the Constitution, there were no term limits on the president.
That's right.
It took Franklin Delano Roosevelt for us to realize, hey, we better do something about this.
Okay.
And we did in his fourth term, I think it was. But nobody else will ever go back there. The thing we were guarding against is having somebody that's akin to a king sitting there, a dynasty building. I say that to say that one thing the founders did do that was good is the entire Congress, all 435 seats, are emptied every 2 years.
That's right.
Every 2 years. And then we have the opportunity to bring back a fresh new set of blood. That is the process we're talking about. The Senate, I forgot who said, I think it was George Washington, that made the point. He says the Senate is where bills come to grind to a halt.
Yes.
And that's exactly what happened. The idea is, the Congress passes a legislation, but it has to pass the Senate as well. And there, the entire system is designed to go super slow. And that is what, for all intents and purposes, was designed to keep us from going off the cliff. At least we can go off the cliff slow enough for us to redirect ourselves before we fall off the cliff. But it has become the 60 vote requirement threshold, it has become an incumbence on us. But notice, it's 60. It takes 60 vote, which is a super. It's not super majority. You could call it a super majority. Super majority is actually 75, but it takes that majority to get laws passed, and then it goes over to the president. But financial bills, anything to do with money, it's a simple majority. We don't take any chances with grinding anything to a halt when it comes to the money.
Exposing.
Yeah,
That's right.
it's a simple, anything that deals with any legislations or bills that deal with money, it's a 50% vote. But we do have the ability, and we should not forget that.
Yes.
But the key is to educate ourselves. But I'm gonna tell you what has happened though, is things like Netflix,
Yep, I noticed that the other day.
Candy Crush,
Yes.
Angry Birds,
Yes.
the NFL, the NBA, the MLB.
Yes.
These inventions are here,
Yeah.
and they keep us as dotards. We are not going to spend the time there when I could go binge watch something on Netflix, or just sit back and play Candy Crush. But sadly enough, folks, if we don't wake up, here's a stat I want you to keep in mind. I ran into. If you think of our taxes that we pay as an average, we spend about $24,000 a year in taxes. The average spends about $24,000 a year. And a tax, by the way, if you buy a fishing license, that's a tax. If you go to the park and have to pay a park fee to go to that's a tax. It's just a different way of saying it. Any money that you give to the government is a tax.
Rent money.
It's a tax. When you add that up, the numbers are about we're averaging about $24,000 a year. Now, that may seem trivial to some, but might seem massive to others. Here's one thing I want you to keep in mind though. If you look at the average American and the amount of money we spend for fuel, rent, food, light, it's about the same amount. It's $24,000. That is to say, the amount of money that the average American pays to exist is exactly equal to how much we spend in taxes today. Okay? We got to fix that. One of the ways we can fix it is by revisiting our fiscal policy, our taxation policy. When I was in 1944, 1945, the highest marginal tax rate was 97%. If you made any money that you made over $200,000 in 1944, let's say you made $300,000 a year, that last $100,000 was taxed at 97%.
Almost.
You only got to keep $3,000 dollars of that. $3,000 of that thing.
Kept the system going.
But it was designed. They actually did it to fund the war. By the time I was born, it fell to 91. I was born in 62. The punitive tax rate, the highest marginal tax rate in 62 was 91%. By the time I graduated from high school, I graduated in 1981. The marginal tax rate, the highest marginal tax rate in America was 70%. Okay? By the time I graduated from college in 86, it fell to 50%. You see the trend here?
And the education piece.
Well, the education piece will always fall.
But we created it.
Because if you don't have the money,
that's right,
you're going to end up cutting things someplace. That marginal tax rate today is, I think, in the low 30s. Now, by the way, a salary today of $200,000 is it's $3 million a year. It's $3 million a year, $3.1 million a year. In other words, $200,000 in 1945 equates to a salary of $3 million. So all we're asking is people who are making over $3 million dollars a year should give up a little bit more for the benefit of our common defense and our common welfare. Those are the only two charges in the Constitution. Okay?
Interesting.
And without that, we're in trouble.
Well, I tell you what, on that particular note, I think we've done a lot. And I would say to the viewing audience, please share this. Share this with your constituents. Again, of the people, by the people, and for the people. And I'm not talking about to millionaires and this, that. I'm talking about to all of the people.
Yes.
You got my point? All the way from the millionaires down to the little person who's homeless, if you will. That's where we are.
Yeah.
It is a wake-up call. It started here with us. And if it's going to continue, it has to be resolved here. So my point is, I guess the point I'm making is, let's get off the personality kick. Let's just go back to a system that we generated. And it worked. That's why we're here today, okay? But now all of a sudden we've developed it to a point now we've got to come up with something, but use that same formula, if you will.
It's there.
It's there, okay? So that again, to you, talking to you out there, to the masses, again, it says of the people, by the people, and for the people. So let's work at this now. Let's get away from the personality deal. If you want to be president of the United States, run for office. Other than that, let's work with the system, and let's do our jobs, whether it be Congress or whomever. Okay?
That's the only way it would work. We've got to do our part.
You did an excellent job.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
It's my pleasure.
Much. And like I said, we're going to have us for the next series so we can take it to the next level.
I look forward to it.
Okay, sounds good. Okay,
right.
good.
You got
Folks,
it.
You've got the word. Take care. I'll see you next week. Please share this with your neighbor. Listen to what I'm covering. No personalities. Deal with the system that was developed here, point blank. And we can continue, and we'll solve a number of the issues that are sitting on the table. Take care. Have a good one. Good job.